Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hello, Woo Crew, and welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and today it's another solo episode. I don't know about you, but I have certainly been feeling the energies of spring beginning to stir in my body, in my dream space, and in the earth. Those currents under the ground and the sap rising in the trees, the warmer days, the longer days, the birds returning. I saw my first robin just last week. Everything points to spring. And as we approach the spring equinox, the height of spring in the Celtic calendar, it has me thinking about blooming. Blooming not just in nature, but in ourselves. And so today I'm going to talk about what I mean by blooming and how to bloom requires us to be connected with our inner power. I talk often on this podcast, as you know, if you've been here with me for any amount of time, about rest, about slowing down, about the hustle culture and productivity culture that we are enmeshed in, and how toxic it is to our very human, very tender bodies and minds and souls. And in today's episode, because my free event, Bloom, a guided journey into your inner power, is happening next week. If you're listening to this episode on March 10th when it airs, it's happening beginning on March 17th. And it is a really transformative space. I'm really, really excited to be bringing Bloom back. And so today I'm going to share some of the overarching themes, what we cover in this week-long program, this week-long live guided journeying series, because whether or not you join me in that space, they're really relevant. And I think that you'll get a lot out of sitting with some of these ideas and unpacking some of the stories that maybe you are telling yourself about when you get to slow down, about, that feeling like you're waiting for the right time to take care of yourself, to slow down. That funny, not funny meme that goes around the internet every now and then, adulting is just saying, but next week things will slow down, except that they never actually do. A big part of this is because we are trying to juggle so many things. And as women in this society, we are also trying to make sure that we're taking care of everybody around us. It's no secret that women manage more of the household chores, and even if they're not actually doing more of the chores, the actual physical labor, there's a really good chance that they're doing more of the mental labor, remembering about what chores need to be done, remembering the grocery list in your head, remembering the kids' school pickup, all of that kind of mental labor that takes its toll. And then in addition, the emotional labor of tending to everybody's emotional needs, being the safe place that others come to, regulating other people's nervous systems. And this is, in a lot of ways, then compounded or piled on to the way that women are also told that they can have it all and do it all and be it all in the society, in that, go to work hard, be productive, have an actual tangible physical output as well, bring home money, even though the other workloads have not lessened over the years. And so women have actually ended up with much more on their plates than at any other time in history. And there's this pervasive societal messaging that tells us that our worth is tied to our usefulness and our productivity. So are we useful to others, and are we productive members of society? And this is really deep, right? It runs really deep. It's part of where people pleasing comes from. Good girl syndrome comes from this space too. And even if we consciously reject these ideas, they definitely are still alive in us. I still catch myself slipping into these patterns, especially when it comes to overdoing it. I always called myself like A-type. I was independent, hyper independent for sure. Still struggle to ask for help or to even recognize where I might need that help because it's been so foreign to me for so long. Pushing, hustling harder, waiting for permission, especially in my business. I am very susceptible to being like, okay, well, I just have to push through this week, this launch, this social media campaign, this podcast recording stint, right? And then I can take a break. But I get to the other side of that push, and then there's always more work there. And so it's really important that we consciously begin to take things off our plate and set really clear boundaries for ourselves. But this requires some courage, some inner knowing, and connection with that inner wisdom, your intuition, and power. So part of the work to step out of this cultural trap, this usefulness and productivity is equated to our worthiness trap, is to begin to come home to our bodies, as we always talk about on this podcast, right? Begin to meet those inner voices within us, to get to know them, and to learn which ones truly belong to us and which ones don't. And I have found that a really powerful way of doing this is not only, self-inquiry, thinking about who is speaking in your mind. Is that voice yours? Does it come from societal or familial conditioning, right? Is it your voice or is it your mother's voice? Maybe it's a bit of both. Is it your true desires, or is it what you've always thought was expected of you, and so you feel like you desire it, but you're not sure? And so journey work can be a really, really powerful way to access these inner voices and to understand which ones come from us and which ones do not. Because journey work, it's guided visualizations is another way to describe what journey work is. It's dropping you into a liminal space where you get to access the subconscious parts of your brain and or your higher self. That future self, maybe your inner child self and her wisdom. There's all sorts of different ways that we can journey together. And when I first offered Bloom last year, I wasn't sure how it was going to play out, if I was going to do mostly teaching and only offer 1 or 2 guided journeys. And what ended up happening was that we went on a journey each day, and each journey builds on the last. And so we are going to go on that journey again. These internal narratives, right? This thinking about who is speaking, where these things are hiding in us, that reclamation of power it's a process. It's a process. I often find myself saying in this sphere that I am in this coaching and healing and mentorship kind of world, that, everyone is looking for a quick fix, a lightning bolt solution to their pain, to their problems. And I do not offer that. I never have, because I don't believe it exists. You might get some temporary relief, or you might find a solution that gets you one layer deeper on your journey of self-expansion and healing. But there's no magic bullet that's going to get you right to the core and be like, cool, I'm healed. Now I'm done. I don't need to do this work anymore, right? We become aware of the more obvious ways in which our conditioning has taken us out of our power. And then when we reclaim those pieces of power, we find other layers that are sneakier and maybe a little bit more reflexive or more hidden. And I'm thinking right now of an example from my own personal life where, so people pleasing, let's define what I'm about to talk about. People pleasing or good girl syndrome, right? Putting other people's needs ahead of our own. This conditioning is so deep in so many of us, and it's tied into the witch wound, and it's tied into the sister wound and the mother wound and wounding in general. It is tied so intimately to the patriarchy, which is really what gave us the witch wound to begin with. And the patriarchy goes back before the burning times. And so this is deep. This is in our DNA. This is from our mothers and their grandmothers and their grandmothers, right? This goes back. And so with this example that I wanted to share, that I realized after the fact was an example of people pleasing and the way that it played out in my life. I had woken up. I was sitting at the edge of my bed. I was writing or trying to write in my dream journal. I was trying to pull back all the images that I'd received in my dreams the night before. I don't tend to remember my dreams, and so I've really been practicing remembering them. And that requires me to consciously pull back details and get them out on paper immediately when I wake up. And Greg had already gotten up. He works early these days because he's working on East Coast time. And so I had these few moments to myself in bed. I knew I didn't need to get up and leave the room. I had this privacy of the closed door. We have very few doors in our house, the bathrooms and our bedroom. That's it. And so I was sitting there, and Greg had heard me sit up. The kitty had heard me sit up. She was meowing at the door. So he let her in, and it was super cute. He was like, let's go see mom. And she wanted to come see me, and she was meowing. And I was so annoyed. So annoyed because I was really wanting to capture this dream. I wanted to have a few moments to myself to bring myself up out of that dream space, to have some space, bodily space and time. And I recognize that for any of you listening who have kids, you're like, you think a cat's bad? I know I have so much privilege in that way in terms of my bodily space and autonomy. But in that moment, I was so annoyed, and I just I kept my head down, and I kept trying to pull the dream, but it was gone. I couldn't bring it back. I just was like, I can't talk to you, and I'm not going to respond, but I know that I'm giving myself grace in this situation because I was not awake yet fully. I was consciously trying to hold on to that great dream space, but Greg kind of got the hint, and they left. But then I was really irritable all morning, and kind of closed down and quiet, and he asked me what was wrong because I was radiating my irritability, and I told him, but I probably told him with a bit of an edge in my voice, and he was hurt. Fair enough. I didn't preface it by saying, I know that you just wanted to come see me and it was really sweet. I didn't have the capacity for that because I had let myself get agitated. And it wasn't until later I apologized to him, but it wasn't until later that I recognized that it was my ingrained habitual people pleasing that stopped me from saying, as he opened the door, can you just give me a minute? I'm just trying to get something down on paper. I just need a moment before you come in. And if I had been able to say that with tenderness in my voice, sure, he might have been offended, but probably not. But I didn't say that because in that moment, I didn't want to make him feel bad. I didn't want to tell him not to come in because that might hurt his feelings. And the irony is that I ended up hurting his feelings anyways. But it was just this really good reflection for me of how easy it is to slip into those behaviors where I gave my power away. In that moment, I very easily could have asked him not to come in the room because I needed a minute. That would have been me standing in my power. And instead I gave it away. And the result was an inner irritability. I was out of alignment. And so I relay this story because it's so insidious, the ways in which this comes out so often. And you can't reclaim your power if you don't know where you're giving it away. And so a big part of the work is developing that awareness, that understanding of the whens and the wheres, the circumstances that you get into where you might be giving your power away, and noticing how it sneaks up. The other piece of our power too, right, is that connection to our intuition, because our intuition has been so devalued as a way of knowing, right? It's not a valid way of knowing in modern society. It's not rational. It's not reasoned. It's not critical thinking. It doesn't make a lot of sense a lot of times. And so that's another way that we give away our power, that inner power, that inner knowing, when we ignore our intuition. But it's really hard to follow your intuition when all of those other external factors are at play, right? When you have these societal expectations and pressures that feel like they are tied to your worth. So, during this week together in bloom, it's not just about self-care, it's about self-reclamation. We are going to do a little bit of learning each day, talking about some of what I've shared here in more depth. We're going to uncover some of those hidden paradigms of unworthiness. I'm going to guide you to connect with parts of yourself that you've lost touch with, or maybe you've never really had contact with to begin with. We're going to lay those foundations for stepping into your inner power, right? A week is not enough time to get all the way there, to fully step in. And yet it is enough time to undergo a real transformative process and to really have a solid foundation of understanding and the beginnings of that connection. And this really isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to yourself, to that inner wisdom. I was actually recording another podcast this morning with a guest. That episode will be coming out in 6 weeks, I think. And she offered up this word rather than empowered. She offered up the word that she made up, but empowered, I-N powered. And I really loved this because this feels like it points that arrow in again. It returns us to our own power and to remembering that we are well-resourced and we have everything we need within us, if only we can access it. And sometimes we need some help to access it. And sometimes we need a container or community to hold the space and the safety while we do such vulnerable work. And so that's a big part of why this offer is free. I want you to come. I want you to bring a friend. I want you to remember that when we don't create the time, we never have the time. That you are worth investing at least this time into yourself. And I'd love for you to sit with this inquiry. What would stepping into your inner power look like for you? What would it feel like for you? What would it help you to create or achieve in this life? It's not a simple journey. It's not an easy journey, but it is so worth it. And I know that the women who decide to jump into this container together and those who create the time where possible to join us live every day, that's where some of the best magic lies, because in that connection, in that community, we share our wisdom and we share the remembering that we are not alone on this journey, even though we might feel so isolated, especially in today's society where we're more isolated than we've ever been. There is community there for you. And I get super excited when I think about those who are going to be in that space together, journeying together to reconnect with their inner worth and their inner power. I would be delighted to have you there with us. And so the link to join will be, as always, in the show notes below. If you can't attend live, never fear, there will be replays. They will be time-sensitive replays, though. Once we wrap the whole series, they'll be available for another week after that. And the reason that I do this is because I know that replays go to my inbox to die. And if it's something I really do want to engage with or commit to, I need a deadline. We all need a deadline because life is really full. So if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. Ask me in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, ask me over on Instagram at I am Eileen March. Email me, eileen@myluminouslife.ca. Sign up at the link below. Again, it's free. Bring a friend. I would love to have you there. It's going to be so powerful. I know this because of how powerful it was for everyone who joined last year. And since then, I know that I have honed my craft and my intuitive gifts, and that the journeys we go on together are going to be that much more potent. If you enjoyed this episode, leave me a comment, leave me a rating, a review, a thumbs up, subscribe, I don't know, all of the things on all of the platforms. Tell a friend. It helps ever so much to get the word out. And as always, if you have any suggestions or anything you'd like me to speak to, please don't hesitate to reach out. Let me know. I hope that I see each and every one of you inside of Bloom next week. And of course, I'll be dropping back into your ears on Monday the 17th with another podcast episode for you as well. Bye for now.